Darling in the Franxx has been concluded for several months at this point, and despite some fans grasping at their lottery-sized chances for a season 2, most have moved on and are searching for another show that can help fill the void. You see, despite Darling being an anime original series, there is no denying that it is drenched in influences from the golden era of mecha and other pop culture sensations. So many that I haven't even seen them all. However, today I'll be listing 3 series that I have seen and think you should check out after Darling in the Franxx. Whether you loved it or hated it doesn't really matter, as I think these series can be appreciated by both crowds. Without further ado, let's get into it. One of the primary aspects about Darling that people latched onto from the beginning, myself included, is this post-apocalyptic setting focused around children being raised in this almost communal environment, where there's clearly mysteries and a more sinister presence behind the scenes. Well, I can't really think of a more comparable show by premise than Shinsekai Yori. Shinsekai Yori revolves around a world where psychokinesis has become commonplace. Children, adults, and the like have developed the power to manipulate the world and everything within it using only their mind. And the story focuses on this dystopian community set 1,000 years into the future that has worked to maintain balance and peace despite the rise of these powers and those who would use it for harm. The show starts with a very eerie and ominous tone. Our main character Saki has finally developed her powers and is now learning about and training them with other kids her age, oblivious to the fact that the ones who aren't performing well are disappearing one by one. Beyond its supernatural premise and beyond the fact that I love shows like this that put me on edge with their foreboding mysteries, what grabbed me from the get-go was the refreshing and practical look at what a dystopian town set 1,000 years into the future would look like. Unlike Darling's presentation of a barren wasteland devoid of all life, or other similarly placed shows filled with decay and ruined buildings, Shinsekai Yori places our characters in a world that has long since abandoned technology, a community that has embraced a tribal lifestyle, and an environment overgrown with flora. This approach feels pragmatic compared to its contemporaries, and the realism makes the story it's based around even scarier. Without spoiling anything, much like Darling, this is a show that revels in its narrative turns and surprises. And more specifically, I can say that it has one of the greatest plot twists I've ever seen in an anime, which beautifully ties into the story and makes you reflect on the series in a completely different way. What I find most comparable about this series, however, is that like Darling in the Franxx, it will most certainly not be for everyone. In fact, I can look back on the show now and say that I don't even like parts of it very much, in spite of the praise I just offered it. There are some very weird narrative decisions and character progression that I don't think fits the story very well. And yet despite that, I've heard many tell me that they do love these choices or moments, to the point where this has become an absolutely beloved series. That is why I recommend it to you guys, and that is why I think it's worth entering with your own expectations and seeing what you get out of it. Beyond the intense mystery and appeal of a darker narrative surrounding the environment these children are living in, another thing that stood out prominently in Darling in the Franxx, specifically in select moments all the way up to episode 15, were the high adrenaline and action-packed fight sequences between the Franxx units and the Klaxosaurs. Contrary to popular opinion, a few of these sequences were actually handled by A1 staff, and they look damn good. But what many are already too focused on are the action sequences animated by the acclaimed Studio Trigger, which accentuated this world, these characters, and these fights with their patented, excessive, and over-the-top flair. That same over-the-top flair can be found in many of Trigger's other works, Kill la Kill, Space Patrol Luluko, and even something more down-to-earth like Kiznaiver. However, the show I will be recommending on this foundation is from our staff's early days before Studio Trigger was even founded. Instead, they were working in a rather unknown group called Studio Gainax. And of course I'm being sarcastic, as Gainax and a lot of these regulars were working on all-time classics such as Panty and Stocking, Fooly Cooly, and Tengen Toppa Gurren Lagann. Gurren Lagann, funnily enough, is also set in a post-apocalyptic dystopian future where all humans live underground in fear of a threat by the name of Beastmen. And much like Darling, one of the focuses of the show is the unknown of these enemies and the twists and turns the story takes later on, some striking eerie resemblances to Darling's overall structure. This shouldn't be at all surprising though, considering Darling's writer and director Atsushi Nishigori played a large role in Gurren Lagann's production as the animation director and character designer. The distinction you will find between Gurren Lagann and Darling, however, is that it doesn't take a lot of itself seriously. The action is even more bombastic and extravagant than you could even imagine, and the series has a wonderful sense of progression and escalation, so that when you reach the absolutely insane set pieces by the end, it doesn't feel out of place or unnatural, because the show gradually built towards it. That's not to say that this is a comedy or that you as a viewer won't be able to take it seriously, though. It still has its very serious moments, and if anything, it's more impressive that such a grand story and these larger-than-life characters can feel so grounded and emotionally endearing. It does have some slower episodes in the beginning, but trust me when I say that it is incredibly rewarding the farther you get, and by the end, I was left with an enormous sense of satisfaction.
Oh, mamma mia, mamma mia! Mamma mia, let me go! Beelzebub has a devil put aside for me, for me, for me.
Without question, there was one series above all else that Darling in the Franxx was compared to incessantly throughout its entire run. You could not have any semblance of discussion about Darling as a whole or specific episodes without hearing this show tossed into the fray at every corner. Neon Genesis Evangelion finds our world not in the post-apocalypse, but on the brink of one, as an organization known as NERV combat alien beings known as angels who bring the destruction of humanity. In order to battle these angels, aptly named mech units called Evangelions, or EVAs, were constructed for humans to pilot. Now, as annoying as the comparisons must have gotten over the months of discussion, there is absolutely no denying that Nishigori drew heavy inspiration and influence from Evangelion, down to almost hilariously plagiarized scenes and sequences that I will not spoil here. This was a blessing for many and a curse for others, some happy to see such love and tribute to Evangelion in a modern series, and others mad at some of the more liberal replications of Hideaki Anno's masterpiece. Either way, however, it implies that there's something worth drawing influence from to begin with, and that is absolutely the case. Evangelion is a wild psychological thrill ride through the mind of a young teenager, who has enormous responsibility pushed on him in a short amount of time. Throughout the show, we watch this character slowly evolve as he passes each trial and tribulation, whether that be fighting the angels, following a father who abandoned him, or suffering through psychosomatic stress and trauma, caused by both the extremities of the world and his own adolescence. And while our main character Shenji is most certainly the focus of our story, an exquisite amount of care and detail were also put into the supporting cast backing him. Whether it be the brash and confident Asuka, the lonely and distant Rei, the competent yet Slaven Misato, and many, many more within the entire cast. It feels like Anno wrote every single character as to have their own individual struggles and inner plights, but also for these conflicts to weave together into a collective theme for the show. Beyond incredible character writing, Evangelion boasts some of the most atmospheric and tension-filled scenes of any anime I've watched, as well as a movie finale that, while incredibly abstract and confusing, is also grand, ambitious, and never loses its identity or the character foundation that the series set. This is one of the most iconic series in all of anime, and regardless of Darling's connections to it, it is a must-watch. And with that, those are 3 series that I would recommend to you. Am I making a personal guarantee that you will like these series? No. Am I claiming that these are the pinnacle of the animation medium? Nope. All I'm saying is that if your interest was piqued at any point during me talking about these shows, then I think it would be a very good idea to check them out, and potentially find a show that you would really enjoy. I am well aware that there are other series that people often compare to Darling. Gunbuster, Diebuster, and Eureka 7 all come to mind, and to tell the truth, I am not familiar with any of those, so I couldn't say either way. I've heard Eureka 7 especially is similar to Darling, and that it's very good, so I'd say that would probably be worth looking into as well. However, if you enjoyed anything I had to say about my picks, or better yet, if you ended up watching one and enjoyed that, I would really appreciate it if you liked the video, and make sure to subscribe if you want to keep up with my anime content in the future. You can also follow me on Twitter or join my Discord server if you want to chat or talk to me. I'm on both pretty much all the time. Links will be in the description, and of course, as usual, have a great day.